Good evening, Little Masters, and welcome to episode 164 of the Prancing Pony podcast, where we seldom use any tongue but our own.
Well, if you don't count Sindarin, Quenya, Khuzdul, and the occasional black speech.
Well, yeah.
And Adonaic, and Old English, and, well, anyway.
And Middle English. And
Middle English. Folks, go ahead and pull up a bench in the common room, and we'll be right there. I'm Sean Marchese, the real-life Lord of the Mark, and I'm here with the Man of the West, who for some reason has hidden our baggage in a deep drift of leaves, Alan Sisto.
Well, better safe than sorry, Sean. Just trying to be careful.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's just that all these elvish skins and cloaks just, I don't know, they just don't look that comfortable, so I'm going to have to go down and lug all our stuff back up the ladder anyway.
You do that.
Okay. Well, while I do that, why don't you start the first segment?
Well, today, folks, we're bringing you another new installment of The North Wing.
Well, Barlam and Butterbur had a room or two in the North Wing at the Prancing Pony Inn, made special for hobbits. Well, this is our place made special for some of our listeners, to give us a chance to get to know them.
Now, rooms at the North Wing are a little bit hard to come by these days, so only our patrons at the Bombadil's Bequest and Círdan's Contribution tiers are eligible. If you'd like to be one of the next patrons to join us, be sure to check out patreon.com/prancingponypod.
Absolutely. We would love to have you. We do have a little bit of a waiting list for the North Wing right now, but we will get to all of those good folks soon, and we will make room for as many of you as we need to.
That's right. Well then, why don't we go ahead and welcome tonight's guest to the North Wing, Casey Hilsey.
Hi guys, thanks for having me.
Hey, we're happy to have you here, Casey. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, pleasure to have you, Casey. Well, why don't we go ahead and start by having you tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? What do you do? And what do your loved ones think of all this Tolkien stuff you're so into? Do they think you're a total nerd? Are they into it too? That sort of thing.
Yeah, my name's Casey. I live with my wife and my daughter. My daughter just turned 2. My wife and I are going to be married 5 years next month. We live in Northern California, in between Sacramento and Tahoe, and I just do accounts payable work. As far as the Tolkien stuff, that's all the boring stuff. Now to the Tolkien stuff. So my wife actually brought this to my attention. I was asking her a little bit about it. And what she pointed out that I think I agree with is that people aren't as aware of my Tolkien obsession, is the word I would use, as perhaps my investment in other things. The easiest comparison is Star Wars. I'm a pretty big Star Wars fan. And since there's, continual new content and the average person is more likely to have watched a Star Wars movie than, read Lord of the Rings, that tends to be a conversation that I talk about, a topic that I'd have conversation with people a bit more. So it's people kind of know all about my general nerddom, I suppose. But when it comes to Tolkien, it's a little more under the radar, more of a personal thing because there's not as big of a community in my area. Not as many of my friends have read it or, listened to podcasts like this.
Yeah.
Generally, they accept it. They like it. They think it's a quirk of mine, a part of me. My wife is really into fantasy. She's not as big a fan of Tolkien as I am, but she still really likes him and his works. And actually, recently she started reading the Silmarillion for the first time.
Oh, wow. That's
awesome. For me. Excellent.
I also heard that my mother-in-law, this past Christmas, I put some Tolkien books on my Christmas list, and the quote that my wife gave me was, "More Tolkien books." So it's there by the people closest to me. They know about it, and they love it. They think it's funny.
Good.
But it's kind of more under the radar, I think, with the general populace, I guess, of the people I interact with.
Not because you're ashamed by any means, right?
No. I try to keep it.
Yeah, I get what he's saying. It's not as much part of the pop culture conversation.
It will be again after the Amazon Prime.
That's what I was thinking. I'm thinking back to when the Peter Jackson
trying to be
movies
on
were
top of
coming
that,
out.
and letting everyone know that I'm a fan. Like when they were announced that it was going to be Second Age, I was like, okay, I'll post a picture on my Instagram of Unfinished Tales. Numenor's in there.
There you go.
Letting people know, like I know things, and I want to talk about this stuff if you're into it. And so
it's going to be just like it was when the Peter Jackson movies were out. People are going to be like coming by your desk all day long and just like asking you questions.
I can't wait for that. That's going to be so cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Casey, the question that we ask everybody who comes to the Prancing Pony: when and how did you first discover Tolkien's works? What was your experience like, and what is it that keeps you coming back?
Yeah, it's so funny that we mentioned the Amazon series and then the Jackson films, because I was, sorry not to date you guys, make you feel old, but I was about 7 or 8 when the Fellowship came out. Jackson's adaptation.
Oh, you stop it.
You're not allowed
stop
to
it now. No.
Yep. Yeah, I was about 7 or 8, and I think I saw a trailer on TV or something, and I thought, I need to watch that. I was right around that age where, Phantom Menace for Star Wars came out, and so just fantasy in general had gripped me. And then I was like, oh, I gotta watch that, and it really stuck with me. I did attempt to read The Lord of the Rings shortly after that, but don't know if I just wasn't smart enough. It didn't quite grip me the way that it has now, and I didn't get past chapter 1. And then fast forward to college about 6 or 7 years ago, 5 to 7 years ago, I don't remember when. I started reading a lot of C.S. Lewis and his biography, learning about the Inklings and his friendship with Tolkien. And my wife, who we were engaged at the time, were looking for something to do. So I decided, you know what, let's pick up The Hobbit. I've been meaning to do this. I tried reading these books when I was younger, and so I read them out loud to her. And then we were immediately hooked. I immediately bought Lord of the Rings, finished that, bought Carpenter's biography, had a copy of the Silmarillion on the way right after that. So I just kind of dove right in. It gripped me.
Yeah.
And it was all because of the Jackson films. And so that's one thing that I'm optimistic and excited for with the Amazon series is, more people like me who probably wouldn't have picked up that book.
Right.
Get introduced through that different medium. And hopefully the books will end up gripping them in
Yeah.
a deeper way than, the films did.
Agreed.
That's the hope. I think it's going to just kind of reopen it to a whole new audience. Yeah.
Right. And maybe even open up some of those earlier tales to an existing audience. The people that did see the earlier films, the people that have read maybe The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, but who have been a little afraid to dive into first and second age stuff. I think maybe this will encourage folks to go ahead and read Unfinished Tales and maybe pick up the Silmarillion as well. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think with my wife, picking up the Silmarillion, part of it too is like, oh, these are, the stories from that age, from before Lord of the Rings. She's familiar with The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings now, but knowing that there's more coming, I think that gave a little extra incentive to go for it. So that's the hope.
Yeah.
Very cool.
What keeps me coming back, and I think it's the depth. It can be read on that level of, this is just a fun story with, wizards and elves and magic and, swords and bows. But it can also be read on all the kind of the deeper philosophical and theological themes that you guys bring up so often and really dive into. I think that is what brings me back in. There's obviously like the modern fantasy term of world building that he did, which is just untouchable.
Yeah.
Right.
But also, the aspects of like, these are stories that really penetrate to the heart, and I really feel like I have become a better person by reading these, and that they really just touch on topics that are really real world and things that I really deal with, and they've been there through the hard times and the good times, and it's really just the depth of not only world building but themes that keep me coming.
That's really well said. I really like that. I think that you put that really nicely, and I couldn't agree more. That's great.
Thanks.
All right. Well, moving on to our next question here, Casey. Which one is your favorite book in the Legendarium and why? And then tell us your favorite non-Legendarium work by Tolkien, if you have one.
Yeah, definitely do. So my favorite book in the Legendarium. So I recently reread the Silmarillion a couple months ago, and I closed the book on that thinking, yeah, that's definitely it. And I think because it dives into so much of that, what that was hinted at in the Lord of the Rings, I love when you get into that, that kind of, the Lord of the Rings has a history to it, and reading that history, it just really, I don't really know how to word it, but there's just something about it that really touched me. And I think a lot of the thematic work he does is on the more theological themes that he touches on in the Silmarillion, I think are ones that I really enjoy. And so I think that, and I just love how broad it is, how big of a scope it is, even compared to Lord of the Rings. And I think that's why I would say Silmarillion. And then as for a non-Legendarium book, it's definitely Leaf by Niggle for definitely the theological themes. It's probably one of the most impactful books I've ever read. It's one I think about continually. I love it so much, and I love how personal it was to Tolkien, and being very familiar with his biography. Yeah, it's just such a touching story, and it resonates. I think even for someone so young to think. I think because you can easily read as a kind of looking back on the life work that you're doing, and so as someone young, it still just kind of really touches me in an intimate way.
Yeah, kind of a reflection on life. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
So moving on from that, this is a little bit more lighthearted. Ever given a pet or child a name inspired by Tolkien? And if you haven't and were to do so, what kind of animal maybe, and what name would you give it?
Unfortunately, I don't. I've been trying to think of ideas. So I recently, I've been recently offered to my wife that we should get a dog and name him Huan, but she was not a fan of that. Okay. And that's what if I had it my way, we would do that. But the wife says no. So I'm working on it. Maybe when she actually reads the story and she, sees She's, the namesake.
What a great
She'll
dog
get it,
Huon
yeah.
is. Who's a good dog?
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
just ask her to choose between Huon and Draugluin. I think she'll probably.
Well, there you go, Draugluin.
And then once she reads the story, she will have no choice but to go with Huon.
Right. Yeah. That's why I got her to read the Silmarillion.
It's better than getting a cat and naming it Tevildo, that's for
There's
sure.
nothing better than getting a cat and naming it Tevildo, sir.
Well, there's nothing more accurate than that, that's for sure.
that
Team
that
Huon,
is
all
our
right.
long-term plan. My wife and I are on the hunt for a black cat named
For a
Tevildo.
Tevildo, a black
Yeah.
cat.
Yeah.
It's got to be a very large cat, too, I think. At least an evil-looking cat.
Yeah, I'm thinking like a big fluffy black Maine Coon or something like that. Call it Tevildo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Tevildo.
And then probably a gray one and name it Mithrandir. But we haven't gotten there yet.
There we go.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
I
anyway,
can get behind that
I
one.
digress.
That's what we do.
Well, now let's go ahead and move on to our lightning round. And these are going to be quick questions and quick answers.
Ooh.
First one is going to be, what's the one place in Middle-earth you wish you could visit?
Visit is definitely Rivendell.
Fair enough. And who's your favorite hobbit?
So I'm very partial to Bilbo. I think I know Sam and the others get a lot of love, and Bilbo's the protagonist of the. Sorry, this is supposed to be lightning round. He's the protagonist of the Hobbit, which is a smaller book. People like Lord of the Rings a little bit more, I think. So I'm all Bilbo.
We need to have like a sound effect for when somebody goes more than 5 seconds on a lightning round.
Like a
answer.
buzzer or something.
Some sort of
yeah.
Or like a hand smack, like slapping somebody.
I don't know that we are in any position to tell anybody else to hurry.
No, we are not. That is quite true.
All right. Tom Bombadil or Treebeard?
Treebeard.
All right.
Favorite poem or song in the Legendarium?
All that is gold does not glitter.
Ooh, nice.
Very nice. And finally, one does not simply walk into Mordor, but if you could, who would you rather have at your side? Merry or Pippin? No.
Ooh.
Let's not do that one. Let's do Sam or Gollum. No. Okay, let's say Aragorn.
Samwise or Gollum.
Let's say Aragorn or Faramir.
Oh, how do I pick?
Bovril or Mithril? Sorry.
Oh my goodness.
That one's
I'm
obvious.
going to say Faramir, because I like Faramir.
Yeah.
All right. Can't argue with that.
Fair enough. Those are some great answers, Casey. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
We really have enjoyed having you here in the North Wing.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolute
very
pleasure,
welcome.
Casey. Thank you.
And in the meantime, I think it's time for us all to head back to the common room and join the rest of the listeners, in this case, quite literally, as we head back to Discord for a live recording.
That's right. And Casey, we'll see you back here at our next Questions After Nightfall, hopefully, if not sooner.
Oh, indeed.
And now we return you to the podcast in progress.
Well, thank you, Alan.
Now let's get back to the book, because we love the books here at the Prancing Pony Podcast.
We certainly do. We bring you other Tolkien stuff from time to time, but at heart, Alan and I are fans of Tolkien's books and books about Tolkien. That's why we started this thing.
That's right. And we read a lot of books in preparation for the show every week. Now, if you'd like to get your hands on a book that we've mentioned, you're going to want to visit the official library page of our website, theprancingponypodcast.com. Now, there we have links to every book we've mentioned on the show.
And I like to think we have a lot of other cool stuff on our website, too. We've got show notes and book links specific to each episode. We've got some outtakes up there. We've got some Prancing Pony ponderings and some other little extras from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
You'll also find a link to our online storefront at teespring.com/stores/PPP, where you can find shirts, mugs, stickers, and a lot of other great PPP gear. So please check that out.
Definitely. And now let's join the company as they take the express rope to their treehouse suites for the night in our third episode on Lothlórien.
Do they have a view? I hope they have a view.
I hope so, but they booked them on Priceline, so they just get what they get.
Yeah.
You
can't even expect 4 walls and a roof at that price, as we'll see.
No, not as we'll see. You get a half a wall and a floor.
Right. That's
and
it.
You'll be happy.
Yeah.
And now I've just condemned us to never being sponsored by Priceline with that little bit, didn't I? That's all right. I think we'll live. They got William Shatner. Yeah. I think they're going to stick with him.
I think they're good. Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and pick up exactly where we left off last time, having met, well, they didn't meet Haldir. They heard him when he told them to Darrow. Out of the shadows, a ladder was let down. It was made of rope, silver gray and glimmering in the dark. And though it looked slender, it proved strong enough to bear many men. Legolas ran lightly up, and Frodo followed slowly. Behind came Sam, trying not to breathe loudly. The branches of the Malorn tree grew out nearly straight from the trunk and then swept upward. But near the top, the main stem divided into a crown of many boughs, and among these they found that there had been built a wooden platform, or flet, as such things were called in those days. The elves call it a talon. It was reached by a round hole in the center, through which the ladder passed. When Frodo came at last up onto the flet, he found Legolas seated with 3 other elves. They were clad in shadowy gray, and could not be seen among the tree stems, unless they moved suddenly. They stood up, and one of them uncovered a small lamp that gave out a slender silver beam. He held it up, looking at Frodo's face and Sam's. Then he shut off the light again and spoke words of welcome in his elven tongue. Frodo spoke haltingly in return. And that's a good spot to stop.
That is a good place to stop.
Mostly because I marked that as the place we're going to stop.
It's almost like we planned it. It's almost like we discussed what we're going to talk about in the show. Yeah, like we have a plan for this show every week. We do, folks, believe it or not.
We do.
So let's go back to the very beginning and this really cool rope. This is the first time we see it.
Yeah.
The silver, glimmering, slender, strong rope that the Galadhrim use. We'll have a little bit more on this later, and
yes, we will.
Still more in a few episodes. But this is the first time we see it. Legolas just making light of it, just running right up. Yeah.
Running lightly up, like, oh, this is no big deal.
For a moment, I get the idea of Legolas actually putting his feet on the rope and running up the rope. But no, I think he's
well, it's a ladder.
He's climbing.
It's a rope ladder. He's climbing the ladder. He runs up the ladder. Yeah. Not without his hands. Is that what you mean?
It is a rope ladder. You're right. It's not just a rope. Good point.
It's not a rope, right? So he's running up the ladder, but he's, I'm sure, using his hands.
But still, he's not just running up it. Like, he's using his hands.
Like the Matrix or something like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's not, or like anything Orlando Bloom did in the movies.
Well, right. This isn't a Peter Jackson film. No.
Right. No, he's actually using his hands. But I mean, he's doing it really quickly. I think that's the point.
Yeah. He's comfortable doing this. He's comfortable in the trees to begin with. He could probably have gotten up there without the rope ladder in the first place with a little more effort. But Frodo, of course, just follows slowly. But then there's Sam, and we kind of miss the humor here because it breaks up from the last chapter, or last part of the last episode, I should say. That he's trying not to breathe loudly. Well, that's because before he was told he was breathing too loud.
Breathing so loud they could shoot him in the dark. Yeah.
Right. So Sam's like, oh, I don't want to breathe so loud. So he's all very cautious.
That's really adorable. I do love that.
It's a great little reference. Yeah,
it is
too. Because earlier he'd hastily put his hand over his mouth. It's great stuff.
Yeah.
But then we get the description of the branches, which is really helpful, right? This gives us more visual, more of an understanding of how the branches come out. We know that. So now these come out parallel to the ground. They come out straight from the trunk, and then they sweep upward.
Right.
And then at the top, the main stem divides into many boughs. Right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So they're coming out flat, which obviously they would have to be in order for there to be this platform up there. Right.
Right. Right.
So now we get to this platform, and I have to say, big props to Professor Tolkien for translating one word we've never heard before with another word we've never heard before.
Which we just talked about, this whole idea of, using a word to define another word, and we don't know either one. But let's get into this.
Yeah. So we learned that the elves call this platform a talon, which is my co-host's name with a T in front of it. And it is a flat space or platform, is how that's defined. The plural of that is talain. Now, I kind of thought that maybe talon might be related to the Elvish root of Atalante, that word, the downfallen, which is used for Numenor.
Yeah.
But apparently they're not related at all. That actually comes from a different root. So, oops. I just kind of like, hey, that's got the TAL. Maybe that's related, but, looks can be deceiving, I guess. So different roots there. But talon just means flat space or platform. Now, Tolkien tells us that such things used to be called a flet.
Right.
F-L-E-T. Now, that is not an Elvish word. That's actually an Old English one. According to Ring of Words, flet, and I'm going to quote from the book here, is an adaptation by Tolkien of an old word for a flat surface, derived from the adjective flat, which could mean either the floor of a room in a hall or dwelling, or by extension, the hall or dwelling itself. But before Tolkien, they say, the word flet never, as far as we know, that's the writers of Ring of Words talking, never, as far as we know, meant a platform built amid the boughs of a tree, whether by elves or human beings. Tolkien weaves the spell of antiquity by taking up the little-known word flet and adding the aside, as such things were called in those days. As usual, calling up a fictional continuity between the past of his story and the present in which he writes. He also neatly binds together two of its distinct meanings, dwelling and flat surface, into a single image.
So, to the professor.
Again, only Tolkien, with this command of the English language and etymologies, to find this obscure word. I can only assume it's obscure in Old English.
Well, we don't know it. I don't know if that defines
we certainly
it as
don't
obscure.
Know. Well, I'm guessing. I don't know for sure that it is, but
yeah.
Still, for him to take this word and take these two distinct meanings that it has and bring them together into one, where it's a dwelling and a flat surface, I think that's so cool.
That really is pretty cool. It's amazing stuff. All right, so now let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the elves themselves. I love this. They're shadow gray, so there's a hint of the cloaks that we're going to see later, right? We know that they're very stealthy here. They're unseen unless they move swiftly. Mm-hmm. So, we'll find out later, of course, that they're wearing the same sort of cloaks that we'll see later being given to the members of the Fellowship.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The light with the silver beam. Now, I've got to ask, is this Tolkien again, drawing on his rich homebrew mythology, like Ratliff says, with a reference, a subtle reference, albeit, to those Fëanorian lamps of the First Age? What do you think?
I think it could be, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I have noticed, too, that there are a few places where elves have these special lamps. And, even though there's no way that anybody reading Lord of the Rings in 1954 would have known anything about Fëanorian lamps.
That doesn't stop the professor from doing that kind of thing.
No, it doesn't. And there's no reason why the Galadhrim, who are wood elves, should have these Fëanorian lamps. But
they
don't necessarily have to be the same thing. I just think it's, like you said, he's sort of drawing on his own mythology. He's kind of referencing himself. I think so.
Like we talked about back in The Hobbit, when the Arkenstone,
exactly,
is the Arkenstone a Silmaril? But it certainly drew inspiration from it.
Exactly. It's kind of a reference to, without actually being the same thing within the same world.
And this could be, I know, like you said, they're wood elves and they wouldn't have those Fëanorian lamps, but remember that Galadriel is an Oldo. So it is possible that she might have, been able to introduce that technology or that craftsmanship or whatever it might have been.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm sure she would have changed the name.
It's an interesting idea. Well, yes, she would have.
Is that one of those Fëanorian lamps I've heard so much? No. This is a Galadrielic lamp.
That's right.
We don't use that name here.
He whose name shall not be spoken.
I unfriended him thousands of years ago.
That's right. Back when it was called MySpace instead of Facebook. I unfriended him on Sierra Online. Or CompuServe.
I'm on online. The original AOL.
I'm on online. There you go.
Yeah.
All right. So we get Haldir greeting them, but Frodo returns the greeting haltingly. So this is just a reminder, like we saw last time, that he's clearly not fluent. He's just passingly familiar with the tongue.
Right. And perhaps taking the hint, then Haldir comes back and actually speaks in Westron. And I'll go ahead and pick up there and start reading.
That's right.
Welcome, the elf then said again in the common language, speaking slowly. We seldom use any tongue but our own, for we dwell now in the heart of the forest, and do not willingly have dealings with any other folk. Even our own kindred in the north are sundered from us. But there are some of us still who go abroad for the gathering of news and the watching of our enemies, and they speak the languages of other lands. I am one. Haldir is my name. My brothers, Rúmil and Orofin, speak little of your tongue. But we have heard rumors of your coming, for the messengers of Elrond passed by Lórien on their way home up the Dimril Stair. We had not heard of hobbits, of halflings for many a long year, and did not know that any yet dwelt in Middle-earth. You do not look evil, and since you come with an elf of our kindred, we are willing to befriend you, as Elrond asked, though it is not our custom to lead strangers through our land. But you must stay here tonight. How many are you? 8, said Legolas. Myself, 4 hobbits, and 2 men, one of whom, Aragorn, is an elf friend of the folk of Westerness. The name Aragorn, son of Arathorn, is known in Lórien, said Haldir, and he has the favor of the lady. All then is well, but you have yet spoken only of 7. The 8th is a dwarf, said Legolas. A dwarf, said Haldir. That is not well. We have not had dealings with the dwarf since the dark days. They are not permitted in our land. I cannot allow him to pass.
You shall not pass. Wait,
that's too soon. Too soon.
Yeah, it is too soon. It is too soon.
For me, the grief is still too near.
Not yet a matter for song.
Nope.
Which, with you singing, it better not ever be. But anyway.
Hey. Ouch. Harsh.
Well, had to do something there.
Brutal.
So they've isolated themselves. We don't need other languages. We are so insular that we don't need to speak any of these other languages, but there are a few of us who still do. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
We're even sundered from our kindred in the north.
I mean, they're isolated, so they don't really need to speak other languages, but they still want to get information from beyond. That makes a certain kind of sense.
Yeah, but
there's only going to be isolationist. I guess it's better to do this than to be completely isolationist.
Well, that's true. Yeah, you don't want to be so isolationist that you literally can't gather any intelligence.
Right. That's not a good point. That's not a good stance.
That's rather silly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cutting off your nose to spite your face. You know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of Nimmerdale, who would only speak her language, all 30 words of it, because she wanted to make a political point.
She had more words. We just don't know them anymore.
I know she had more words. I just like the joke, Sean. I'm sorry.
She probably had 30 words for tree. Come on.
She probably did. She probably had 30 words for Noldoran traitor, but anyway.
Probably. She probably thought up some new ones.
She probably did. What do you think that debate was about when she finally accepted the offer of engagement?
I know. How do you say, and another thing in Sylvan Elvish?
And another thing. Seriously, if you have to debate at your engagement, maybe you think twice, pal. But anyway.
Yeah, anyway.
Sorry.
So back to the text.
Yeah, I digress. That's true.
We finally have Haldir introduced as Haldir.
Right.
And he introduces his brothers as well, Rúmil and Orifin.
The oddly named Rúmil, I might add. Yeah.
We talked about this last time, didn't we? That Rúmil is actually a Noldoran name. It's actually the name of the Noldoran lore master who first invented writing.
Yeah. So whose script was superseded by that of Feanor.
Right.
He was shown up.
Yeah. There's also something interesting on the name of Haldir here. Actually, Hammond and Skull tell us that in Tales of the First Age, Haldir, which is Sindarin for hidden hero, was briefly the name of the son of Orodreth, second ruler of the Noldoran realm of Nargothrond, but in later accounts became the ruler of the men of Brethil, and that's what I know him as, who was slain in battle against Morgoth, and that's the same Haldir of Brethil who actually fostered Húrin and Huor.
That's right. Well, next we get this little bit about how they got the news, right? We speculated about this last time, but we didn't have to speculate because the answer's right here. We have had rumors of your coming, for the messengers of Elrond came by.
I think we ended up talking about this back in The Ring Goes South even.
I think we did. That's when we were speculating. I don't think we speculated.
The Ring Goes South are many meetings. I can't recall now which. I think it's The Ring Goes South, isn't it?
I think so. I think it was the early part of The Ring Goes South.
Yeah, yeah.
And in fact, I even have that line from The Ring Goes South. Let's take a look at this. The sons of Elrond, Elladan and Elrohir, were the last to return. They had made a great journey, passing down the Silverlode into a strange country. But of their errand, they would not speak to any save Elrond.
That's right.
Yeah.
And they crossed over the Misty Mountains safely, unlike...
Yeah, exactly. Unlike the rest of the guys. Yeah. I guess Carothers didn't have anything against them.
Unlike 1/9 of the company, let's put it that way.
Well, too soon, Sean. Too soon.
Yeah. 89% of them made it across great. But
I'm impressed with the math. That was well done.
Thank you very much. Thank you. There's still a few mathematical things I can do, and that's one of them.
That is one of them. Well, we'll press you for more skills on that later. But for now, I'm interested in observing Haldir's recognition that they had not heard about hobbits for many a long year. They literally didn't know that there were any left.
Didn't know they were still around. Yeah.
Thought you all went extinct. I mean, it's kind of sad that the elves care so little that we don't know.
We really thought you guys would have died out a long time ago.
Right. I mean, really, how in the world could you build a functioning society all being, 3.5 feet tall? I'm sure is what the elves were thinking. I mean, they thought the stunted people were stunted. And the stunted people are like 6 inches to a foot taller than hobbits.
Right.
I don't know. But at least they don't look evil, unlike dwarves, which apparently do, as we'll get to in a moment.
Man, this is brutal. We'll get into this in just a bit.
Isn't it? Oh, it gets nasty. Haldir is it's going to be fun to get into this.
It does. It's going to just get straight racist here in just a minute. But we'll
Yes, it will. Yes, it will.
But yeah, I mean, and they say not only do you look dangerous, but at least you've got a friend who's an elf, right?
Well, yeah. Legolas is going to vouch for you.
And I don't know, is it interesting that Haldir doesn't notice that Frodo is an elf friend?
I think so.
Others in this book have noticed that Frodo's an elf friend right away, right?
Tom noticed it right away. I believe the elves in the Woody End. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but I think he also recognized that. But certainly Tom noticed it right away.
Was it Gildor who first named him Elf Friend?
Oh, and that's right. Gildor named him Elf Friend.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. It was
but
Tom
then,
that noticed
But then
it.
I think, like you said, Tom noticed it. Goldberry noticed it.
Mm-hmm.
I think others have noticed it. I don't know if this is just another indication of them being self-isolated, or
maybe
is it a function of their wisdom? We know
that's
Tom
true.
is very wise. Is it something that only the wise can detect? What do you think?
That's actually a very good point, because I bet that Galadriel and Celeborn would recognize it.
I bet they would, yeah.
But Haldir isn't of the same class, so to speak. He's not part of that strain. So
yeah,
maybe
because
Gildor and his folk, they're Noldor. They're going back to they're going back to Rivendell from the towers, and like Galadriel, they're a group of wiser elves.
Mm-hmm.
We've always drawn that distinction, haven't we? We talked about the elves of Thranduil's kingdom being dangerous, that they are, they're still good people, but Tolkien had to make that clear, they're elves, and that's good people. So we had to make that distinction because, of course, they were not treating the dwarves very kindly in that particular segment of the story.
Yeah, exactly. The whole more dangerous and less wise thing.
More dangerous, less wise. I think that may be part of it, yeah.
And I'm looking back at the text of Three Is Company, and Gildor did actually name Frodo Elf Friend.
That's right.
But initially, he actually originally said, "Hail, Elf Friend." Even before he named him Elf Friend, he said, "Hail, Elf Friend."
Yeah.
When Frodo greeted him in Quenya.
Right.
So that's interesting. He sort of officially named him Elf Friend after he had already called him Elf Friend.
It's almost like recognizing the nature of his character and then bestowing a title upon him.
As opposed to bestowing a title. It's like,
right.
Exactly. He's recognizing something innate in Frodo.
And that's something that Tom would have recognized as well.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the title, but that innate character.
Yeah.
And yet Haldir doesn't notice that.
But for whatever reason, Haldir doesn't. And it could just be because he's just he's a more rustic elf,
Yeah.
He's not one of the wise. And as you said, they are sort of, they are more dangerous and less wise people as wood elves.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though, as we'll see, because they're ruled by Galadriel and Celeborn, they do have a bit of a leg up in the wisdom category over some other elves.
They do. It's sort of like the elves that lived under Thingol and Melian. The same
That's
thing.
True.
Where they were lower than Thingol. They weren't, elves of the light like Thingol was.
Right. But they were sort of elevated just by the presence of Thingol and Melian.
By his presence, and of course by her presence being an Ainu. So,
right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, then we get to the guest list. Who do we have?
So Legolas lists 8 people, and then he says himself, the hobbits, Aragorn, and some other guy.
And some other guy.
Right? I mean, 2 men, one of whom is Aragorn, an elf friend of the folk of Westerners. Interesting, Legolas does identify Aragorn as an elf friend, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
And he's an elf friend in a couple of different ways. He's an elf friend in that he's literally friends with elves.
Well, he's,
more
if
than
you
friends
want to say
with one
he's
elf.
just friends, right? Exactly.
Right.
I can call that more than friends right there, pal.
He's no longer friend zoned by at least one elf.
Yeah, that's right.
But he's also one of the Edain, one of the Dunedain.
Yeah.
And
a true
we know
elf
that
friend
they tend to be
sense.
called elf friends in general.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's absolutely right.
But I notice here, not only does he not identify the other guy, whoever that is, but he doesn't even mention the dwarf.
No.
He's like, he's kind of like taking a page from the Gandalf Beorn playbook here.
That is exactly where I was going. That is exactly what I was thinking, except with less humor. This doesn't quite have that sense of moment, but it's exactly that same sort of thing.
It's not nearly as skillful either. It's like, there's 8 of us.
It's pretty clumsy.
And I've just named 6.
So mentioned a 7, right?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So then they finally, he finally points out the dwarf, and Haldir's reaction. Oh no. He is not going to be allowed to pass. He can't come here. He cannot be here. And
that's sad.
Isn't it?
I mean, well, we'll get to this, but
yeah, we will. We've got a lot to talk on that. I thought it was interesting that in the passage that we don't read right after this, it's Frodo that defends Gimli. It's not Aragorn. And interestingly enough, despite their supposedly growing friendship, it is not Legolas.
That's true.
Legolas does not say a word in Gimli's defense. Frodo's the one who stands up and says, look, Gimli's not of the dwarves that, woke the Balrog. He's friendly to Elrond. In fact, Elrond chose him as a companion, and he's proven brave and faithful. Mm-hmm. So Frodo's the one who stands up. And I thought that was really interesting. And it was Legolas that did not.
Well, it's not too surprising, I don't think. I mean, we do know that Legolas and Gimli are going to be friends. There have only been a couple of hints.
They're not yet. Yeah.
They're not yet. And there have only been a couple of hints so far for a first-time reader that that's going to happen.
That's true. Yeah, I'm probably reading that with the eyes of somebody who's read the story 1,000 times. That's probably true.
Well, but I mean, I think that's fair because I think all along, we've been pointing out the few times when Legolas and Gimli have sort of been paired up a little bit in the last few chapters. So I think it's fine to observe that. But yeah, I guess not too surprising that, especially around other elves.
Yeah, that's true too. He doesn't want to be seen as, condescending to hang out with.
He doesn't want to be seen as some dwarf lover around other elves. It's like, this is kind of like the lunchtime at school, and suddenly, you were friends with this guy over the weekend, but, it's like the Breakfast Club. He's back.
Oh, my goodness.
He's back around the elves. He's back around his other friends. And I was like, no, I'm not
now
friends
I'm picturing
with this guy.
who's who in the Breakfast Club. I'm picturing members of the company as members of the Breakfast Club, and that's just not.
No,
that does not fly.
It doesn't map too well.
No, but you know which one's Boromir.
Oh, Emilio Estevez, totally.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I guess Aragorn's Judd Nelson, but
he'd have to be.
Certainly,
movie version of him would be, wouldn't he? Sort of brooding.
Yeah.
It
really doesn't work. It
does not work. It doesn't work because, it just doesn't work. So we're gonna leave it there.
No, it doesn't work.
All right.
But I do want to say one thing in Legolas's defense, because
sure.
While you said he doesn't say a word in Gimli's defense, and we certainly don't see any words that he says in Gimli's defense, but we do then get this discussion between the elves speaking together in soft voices. They're questioning Legolas in their own tongue, and we don't know what they're actually saying.
That's a very good point. I'm sure
after
Legolas
talking
says
to
something.
Legolas in Elvish, it does seem like Legolas must say something that makes a difference in Haldir's decision to allow Gimli. And maybe Legolas does end up vouching for him.
Could be.
Or
I think to some extent he must, because then he's held responsible.
That's true.
Right? Aragorn and Legolas are the two that have to answer for him if he does something.
Yeah, that's true. So, I mean, I guess Frodo's words obviously make a big difference, but I think Legolas does something. We just don't know exactly.
You're right. He must. Yeah, I think you got a good point.
But as you say, not only are Legolas and Aragorn going to be responsible for him, but
yeah, he's going to have to wear a blindfold. There is a big catch. You're going to have to wear. We'll get to more of that later. I can't wait to get to that moment. But oh man, okay, we'll let him through, but he's going to have to wear a blindfold. Yeah.
And Haldir just completely glosses over it.
Right, doesn't he?
And
he must go blindfold. But now we must debate.
He must
no
go blindfold through Lothlórien. But now we must debate no longer.
Right.
You know what?
Speak to the hand. Speak to the hand. I'm not
no more time to talk about it now. We'll get through the details later. We got to go, guys.
Right,
on,
exactly. We'll iron this out another time.
Yeah.
Orcs and wolves are coming, man. Let's get going.
Yeah. It's all pretty funny when you break it down like that. But
it really is. I mean, even though he's right, orcs and wolves are coming, and we probably should.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, get off the ground.
It's just very convenient that. I love that. That's great. Anytime anybody
says get off the something,
gets off anything, we get that.
It's the panic Frodo look. Get off the road.
Get off the ground.
Get off.
Oh man.
Oh goodness, it's going to be a long night, folks. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pick up a little after that with the next section here as they sleep in the treehouse, which is kind of fun, really. If there are walls, that's probably the only thing I'm concerned about, but we'll see. I think they all live. The 4 hobbits shall climb up here and stay with us. We do not fear them. There is another talon in the next tree. There the others must take refuge. You, Legolas, must answer to us for them. Call us if anything is amiss, and have an eye on that dwarf. Legolas at once went down the ladder to take Haldir's message, and soon afterwards Merry and Pippin clambered up onto the high flat. They were out of breath and seemed rather scared. There, said Merry, panting. We have lugged up your blankets as well as our own. Strider has hidden all the rest of our baggage in a deep drift of leaves. You had no need of your burdens, said Haldir. It is cold in the treetops in winter, though the wind tonight is in the south. But we have food and drink to give you that will drive away the night chill, and we have skins and cloaks to spare. The hobbits accepted this second and far better supper very gladly. Then they wrapped themselves warmly, not only in the fur cloaks of the elves, but their own blankets as well, and tried to go to sleep. But weary as they were, only Sam found that easy to do. Hobbits do not like heights, and do not sleep upstairs, even when they have any stairs. The flet was not at all to their liking as a bedroom. It had no walls, not even a rail. Only on one side was there a light-plated screen which could be moved and fixed in different places according to the wind. Pippin went on talking for a while. "I hope if I do go to sleep in this bird loft that I shan't roll off," he said. "Once I do get to sleep," said Sam, "I shall go on sleeping whether I roll off or no, and the less said the sooner I'll drop off, if you take my meaning." Yeah. So I'm just looking at their Yelp reviews for this place. It's not going to be good.
Oh, they're terrible. Yeah, no. Yeah. I mean, you check in and there's no roof and only one wall.
And it's movable. Again, and it's really more of a screen than a wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and movable was, it's listed as an amenity, but you're like, well, I didn't realize that was the only wall, was the movable.
Yeah. I thought, oh, nice. There's a little privacy screen that I can use.
I'm thinking, you can kind of pull the screen and, kind of get like a little suite effect with the kid sleeping on the sleeper sofa. Yeah, no, but no.
But no, this is the only wall that exists.
Just one wall. Yeah.
And it won't stop you from rolling off. Not even close.
No.
It'll just land on your body when you fall to the bottom.
Well, yeah, if you go through it. If you roll off in one of the other three directions, well, you don't even get that.
No, that's true. So, oh, man. Yeah.
So the elves say that the four hobbits can stay here with them. The four hobbits can stay on this Talon.
They're mostly
because we're not afraid of them.
Right, right.
But everybody else who actually is a capable warrior is going to have to stay in the next tree over.
I mean, I love that.
The delightful casual racism of have an eye on Gimli.
I know. My goodness.
And
that's a way to put it. The delightful casual racism. Yeah.
And I just can't get past it. They just cannot.
No, I can't either.
Leave it alone. They just keep insinuating that Gimli's going to do something. Which
I know. And they don't even tell him. Haldir doesn't even say, "Oh, by the way, and Dwarf, true. I don't know your name, Dwarf, but please don't do anything. Keep, be responsible." And instead you keep an eye on that thing.
Right.
I mean, it's exactly. Terrible.
I'm not even going to talk to him, but you keep an eye on him.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just terrible. I mean, and they don't even suspect him of anything specific. It's just like,
it's
he's
just
he's
a dwarf. Right.
You know how they are.
Yeah. Boy, you're not kidding. It's the broadest
just icky. I'm sorry. And I know
icky.
it's Haldir and everything. We love Haldir, but dude, no, this is not cool.
Well, this is the book Haldir. There's a little
That's
different
true.
Than the movie Haldir.
That's true. Love. Movie Haldir is really the fan favorite. Book Haldir isn't really. He doesn't quite have the same.
He doesn't quite
reaction.
measure up, does he? No,
that's true.
Mostly because he doesn't show up to.
We don't have to watch him die.
Deep
I guess that's part of it.
Exactly. And have Legolas look at him like, "Dead? I didn't know elves could die.
What is this death thing?
What is this? Yeah, what is this death you keep speaking of?"
Right.
I mean, like Legolas had never, ever seen a battle before. I don't know. Anyway, don't get me started on that. But anyway, so Merry and Pippin come up with the blankets. Strider wisely had hidden everything else, as we suggested that I did, and put all our bags under the leaves. But
And Haldir tells them after the fact, "Oh, by the way, you didn't need to bring any of that stuff up here."
Oh yeah, thanks for telling me.
We've got food.
I'm a small 3.5 foot tall person trying to climb a flimsy rope ladder with one arm because I'm carrying my blankets. I wish you told me that sooner.
You guys really didn't need all that stuff. Like, okay, well, thanks for telling us now.
I can see now the TripAdvisor review might get 2 stars. 1 star for the room itself, but then an extra star because they did have really good food and drink, and it was apparently free.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's a much better supper than they had.
And the hobbits are going to be happy to have another supper.
Always.
Because second supper is the new second breakfast, of course.
Of course. They'd have a second lunch, too, if it was offered to them. Let's make no mistake.
I think so. I don't think they would say no to a third supper, honestly, if it was offered to them.
So then they wrap themselves up nice and warmly. And, of course, the elf blankets aren't enough for them. They got to get their own, too. And they try to sleep. But that's where we get into what we just talked about, the fact that, hey, man, we don't even sleep on the second floor of a building, something with 4 walls and a roof. We don't do that. So sleeping in a tree, you're out of your mind. I am not doing that. I'm not going to be able to fall asleep. No way.
I'm not a hobbit. I'm not sure I would do this. I mean,
I don't think I could do this. No.
No, not even a rail or anything.
I mean, I suppose if it's like 15 feet away, I'm not so afraid that I'm going to roll off. But if this thing is tiny and I can like reach the edge with my hand, yeah, I'm not doing that.
But then again, I mean, you think about it, like you don't have a rail on your bed, and how often do you roll out of bed and fall out of your bed?
Yeah, but if that happens tonight, they're dead. I mean, the risk of me falling out of my bed is waking up and going, oh crap, you know? I mean, really.
I would not let my children sleep in this situation at all, because my kids do fall out of bed sometimes.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
But Pippin is concerned that he'll roll off.
A bird
and he
loft.
calls it a
I
bird
love
loft,
that.
which I think is it's a wonderful Pippinism.
It is a Pippinism, absolutely.
It does say, but actually, we get this exchange between Pippin and Sam, but we've already been told that Sam doesn't have much trouble sleeping, doesn't it?
No, we've seen that, right? Isn't there a thing about, there's a line about sleeping like a log?
Weary as they were, only Sam found that easy to do, I guess, to get comfortable, I guess.
Something
Not
about
sleep,
logs
to get
sleeping or something like that.
Oh, yes.
That?
You're right. Yeah, there's that moment in...
when is that?
I think it's in Tom Bombadil's house, isn't it?
I think it is. Something about
where Sam
if logs are contented. He slept through the night in deep content if logs are contented.
Sam slept contented if logs are contented, yeah.
Yeah, which is just a great line. Another one of those things that just gives us... look, Sam can sleep anywhere. This is a guy who works hard, and when he's done, it's time for him to go to sleep.
But he can't sleep if Pippin keeps on complaining.
No, that's true. So he makes that little comment of, I'm going to go on sleeping. It doesn't matter. Even if I fall off, I'm going to sleep all the way down. I love that. He's basically, shut up. I want to go to sleep. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And I love his wordplay, actually. This is,
I know. It's brilliant.
Where he says, the less said, the sooner I'll drop off. If you take my meaning.
If you take my meaning, right.
He means drop off as in sleep, of course, but he's also making a pun on the idea of rolling off the edge of the flet, which I think is awesome. Yeah,
which is great. I love that. That's no accident.
Sam is quick-witted when he wants to be.
He is. He is the clever. He's got the quick tongue for sure.
Yeah.
In the group, no doubt about it. Well, so they do fall asleep, except for Frodo, who is looking up at the stars. That's where I'm going to have you pick up.
Late in the night, he woke. The other hobbits were asleep. The elves were gone. The sickle moon was gleaming dimly among the leaves. The wind was still. A little way off, he heard a harsh laugh and the tread of many feet on the ground below. There was a ring of metal. The sounds died slowly away and seemed to go southward, on into the wood. A head appeared suddenly through the hole in the flet. Frodo sat up in alarm and saw that it was a gray-hooded elf. He looked towards the hobbits. "What is it?" said Frodo. "Ich," said the elf in a hissing whisper, and cast onto the flet the rope ladder rolled up. "Orcs," said Frodo. "What are they doing?" But the elf had gone. There were no more sounds. Even the leaves were silent, and the very falls seemed to be hushed. Frodo sat and shivered in his wraps. He was thankful that they had not been caught on the ground, but he felt that the trees offered little protection, except concealment. Orcs were as keen as hounds on a scent, it was said, but they could also climb. He drew out Sting. It flashed and glittered like a blue flame, and then slowly faded again and grew dull. In spite of the fading of his sword, the feeling of immediate danger did not leave Frodo. Rather, it grew stronger. He got up and crawled to the opening and peered down. He was almost certain that he could hear stealthy movements at the tree's foot far below. Not elves, for the woodland folk were altogether noiseless in their movements. Then he heard faintly a sound like sniffing, and something seemed to be scrabbling on the bark of the tree trunk. He stared down into the dark, holding his breath. Something was now climbing, slowly, and its breath came like a soft hissing through closed teeth. Then coming up, close to the stem, Frodo saw two pale eyes. They stopped and gazed upward, unwinking. Suddenly they turned away, and a shadowy figure slipped round the trunk of the tree and vanished.
Bum, bum, bum. Yeah.
Yep.
The orcs go marching 2 by 2, hurrah, hurrah. The orcs go marching 2 by 2, hurrah. Thankfully, they're going marching a little
This is not a good thing to wake up to in the middle of the night, is it?
No, the sound of orcs tromping off in the background. You can hear Howard Shore's score going. I thought, I liked the little bit that we didn't read, though, about Frodo looking up at the stars while Sam slept and snored. And there was just something
I do love that.
Yeah. It's the stars again, isn't it?
Yeah, and whenever there are elves in Tolkien, there are usually stars.
Yeah.
And
you notice
here
that.
again,
it's impossible not to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great stuff. 2 elves sitting on the talon with them, and the third down, at the base of the tree, standing guard, presumably. And he finally falls asleep, hearkening back to our last episode, to the song that Legolas sang about Nimrodel.
Right. But then he wakes and he finds the elves are gone. And then that's when he hears the orcs go marching by. This harsh laugh, right? And the sound of many feet.
Yep.
And when I read this about this noisy tromping of the orcs, I can't help thinking of the fact that one of the words in Sindarin for the orcs is Glamhoth, the noisy horde.
That's right.
And here we see exactly why that's the case. They're stomping around, they're laughing harshly. There's this noise of all this gear that they're carrying.
Yeah.
Got to be pretty terrifying to wake up to.
It must be. And what also is terrifying to wake up to is a head appearing through the hole in the flat. Presumably attached to the shoulders of somebody else. But yes, for a moment, I'm thinking of Minas Tirith when they start seeing the heads,
Oh, gosh.
The artillery, that terrible artillery.
Yeah. None of that.
No, this is not that. This is not, this is not the Highlander here. This is one of the elves poking his head up through the center hole there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Frodo asks, what's going on? And I'm sure he had a pretty good guess, but the elf confirms it, orcs. But he uses a word, irch, and which, again, I give you the voiceless fricative all the time, so I want to make sure you got that, right?
Yeah, irch. Thank you for that. And I think I'm getting better at them. Somebody out there is going to be listening and say, no, you're really not. But I think I'm getting
terrible at them, which is why I try to give them to you when I can. But tell me a little bit about that. I know we don't have a ton of word nerdery there, and we don't need a lot, but give us a little bit about where that relates to orc.
This is just a regular plural in Sindarin. It's the plural of the Sindarin word orch, O-R-C-H.
Okay.
Sindarin typically forms plurals by modifying the vowels of the word. So, you see this with things like Dunedain, singular, and then the plural of that is Dunedain.
Right.
You see this with something like Amon, which means hill, and then the plural of that is Aemon, E-M-Y-N.
Oh, where both vowels have changed, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's how Sindarin tends to form its plurals. And so that's all that's happening here is you've got the singular form, orch, and then that's pluralized as irch. The O is just changed to a Y.
Interesting. I'm sure several of the word nerds out there could tell us what the rules are for converting to plurals, because it's not Dunedains and Amons and orcs. It's Dunedain and Emin and then irch.
Right.
So, interesting.
Exactly.
So, very quiet. Frodo's sitting there and shivering, and he makes this observation that orcs can not only sniff out their prey, right? What's he say? That they were keen as hounds on a scent, but they could climb. So there was a real danger here, even with the ladder pulled up. And so he's got Sting out. And yeah, Gordon Sumner is glowing like a blue flame. I had to go there. I'll try to stop.
Many miles away, something crawls from the slime.
Oh, beautifully done.
Thank you. I was listening to Synchronicity not long ago.
Oh, that's a great album, isn't it? That's got to be one of my, the top 10, 20 albums. Yeah, it's just a classic.
Every once in a while, I just got to spin it. Just, once or twice a year, at least.
I agree. Yeah, no doubt. But then it fades away, so no more orcs. But that's not the end of the danger,
and yet, even though he's got, the orc detector stops beeping here, but the sense of danger actually grows stronger, not weaker. Yeah. And we soon see why. Frodo hears these movements. He hears this sniffing and the scrabbling, this hissing breath. And then we know who this is by now.
The luminous eyes. Yep.
These two pale eyes, unwinking.
And unwinking. It should be noted they are unwinking. They're not winking eyes.
Unwinking, not winking.
Yeah.
As wonderful as it is to imagine Gollum just, watching him and winking at him. No, that's not what's happening here.
That's pretty funny stuff, actually.
Hello.
No, it's not that.
Guess who?
That's right.
Just me, that's all.
Gollum. And then he's gone. Gone. Yeah. Slipped around the trunk of the tree, vanished.
Yep.
And we're going to find out exactly why right now as I pick up.
All right.
Immediately afterwards, Haldir came climbing swiftly up through the branches. There was something in this tree that I've never seen before, he said. It was not an orc. It fled as soon as I touched the tree stem. It seemed to be wary and to have some skill in trees, or I might have thought that it was one of you hobbits. I did not shoot, for I dared not arouse any cries. We cannot risk battle. A strong company of orcs has passed. They crossed the Nimrodel, cursed their foul feet in its clean water, and went on down the old road beside the river. They seemed to pick up some scent and they searched the ground for a while near the place where you halted. The 3 of us could not challenge 100, so we went ahead and spoke with feigned voices, leading them on into the wood. Orifin is now gone in haste back to our dwellings to warn our people. None of the Orcs will ever return out of Lórien, and there will be many elves hidden on the northern border before another night falls. But you must take the road south as soon as it is fully light. Some interesting things to talk about here.
Yeah. Starting with Haldir immediately observing that, well, something was in this tree, but
yeah,
I don't know what it was.
I got no clue. It actually had some skill, so I know it wasn't one of you guys. How do you like that little backhanded?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was wary and had some skill. Otherwise, I might have thought it'd be one of you. Who was clumsily falling down the trunk. Then I would think.
Well, and that's obviously a clue to who it actually is, because
exactly is a clue.
It kind of seems hobbitish, but it seems like a hobbit who's been climbing trees for the last few hundred years.
Yeah,
you don't know why that would be a thing, but here you go.
Mm-hmm.
But all he knows really is that it's not an orc.
Right.
As you said, that it was wary and had some skill in trees, but
right.
No idea otherwise. But of course,
no.
We know that it starts with G.
We do.
And ends with Allum.
Yeah, exactly. Rhymes with Smeagol. He couldn't shoot it, though, he says, because we can't risk battle. Now, that is not because they were kind to him like Legolas's people. I just want to observe that.
Oh, you're bringing that up again, are you?
Yeah, I'm going to always bring that up. It was like, oh, the poor guy, he deserves some time outside on the tree. No, this is like, I was going to kill him if the orcs weren't near.
How the Mirkwood penal system is now the laughingstock of all Middle-earth.
What Mirkwood penal system, we might say.
Exactly.
The Mirkwood summer camp. Oh, man.
We just thought he was going out to lift some weights. No, but that is a really good point.
Oh, we let him
we
out
totally would have shot him, but we can't risk battle because, orcs just pass through here.
3 of us and 100 of them, that's not good odds, no matter how good we are. Yeah.
Yeah, and they do say it was a large company.
Yeah.
They crossed the Nimmerdale, which is just...
Curse their foul feet. I love that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, we saw before, just in the last episode, the water is clean, and it's got this healing, property to it. And so, yeah, it is kind of a sacred water that the orcs have just defiled by walking through it without wiping their feet first, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's not a mat across from Nimmerdale.
No, and they would just skip over it if they...
Or how like you go to the beach and they've got, or you go to a pool and they got that shower you're supposed to stand in before you get in the
you're
pool.
Supposed to rinse off your feet. Yeah, the orcs are not going to do that.
No, they're not.
But so they did cross the Nimmerdale, and then they went on down the old road beside the river.
Right.
And then seemed to pick up some scent, search the ground, and then Haldir and his brothers led them deeper into the forest.
Yeah, they probably would have found that stash of stuff that Aragorn put there. I mean, is that really the best place to put it? Couldn't you just pull it up the tree, Aragorn? Really? I mean,
he hit it.
Merry and Pippin are carrying their stuff, but you can't carry anything? I don't know. I'm just thinking.
He would have just made Merry and Pippin carry the rest of it. So
well, that's true. Or Sam.
Probably just as well that he just hit it.
Yeah, good point.
Well, for some reason, Gimli decided to take the Book of Mizarble with him, and that thing's got a ton.
Sorry, I can't carry anything. I got the Book of Mizarble with me.
Right.
So
would have been great if somebody had brought a pony, but, oh well.
Well, yeah. Wolf food. The orcs won't escape now, which at least that's good. But y'all have to leave as soon as it's light. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here, is kind of what he's saying. Yeah.
That's right. So that's as good a place as any for me to just go ahead and pick up with the next section.
I think so. That just makes the most sense.
Day came pale from the east. As the light grew, it filtered through the yellow leaves of the malorn, and it seemed to the hobbits that the early sun of a cool summer's morning was shining. Pale blue sky peeped among the moving branches. Looking through an opening on the south side of the flet, Frodo saw all the valley of the Silverlode, lying like a sea of fallow gold, tossing gently in the breeze. The morning was still young and cold when the company set out again, guided now by Haldir and his brother Rumil. "Farewell, sweet Nimmerdale," cried Legolas. Frodo looked back, and caught a gleam of white foam among the gray tree stems. "Farewell," he said. It seemed to him that he would never hear again a running water so beautiful, forever blending its innumerable notes in an endless, changeful music.
Man, that is a beautiful description, isn't it?
That is an utterly beautiful passage.
It's so brief, but it's so...
From beginning to end, beautiful imagery.
It casts a spell on you. It really does.
Yeah, it does.
Everything. That's why I had you read that. Is there's just so much imagery there, so much beauty captured by Tolkien's words. Everything from the way the light comes through the leaves to the sky peeping among the branches.
Yeah.
All these, just the fallow gold. I mean, there's just, everything has these extra little adjectives that add depth to this landscape description.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, and then Nimmerdale
and
itself.
there's just some of this, some of that musical language that we see sometimes.
Yeah.
There's a few lines between these two, but I'm just looking at like the word Malorn and then the word fallow.
Oh, yeah.
The assonance between those two words, even though there's a lot between them. But again, it just has a very musical quality all throughout.
I agree.
We're moving into an enchanted place here.
That's true. We are.
So it makes sense that we would get some very, very enchanted, very ornamental language here.
That's a good way of putting it.
But it is time for the company to depart.
Yeah.
When it's still cold, when the morning is still young, they're going to be going with Haldir and one brother, his brother Rumil.
Right.
Orifin has gone on to warn the others.
Right. And then there's that sorrow, that bittersweet, I know we got to move on, but wow, I don't want to leave. I'm never going to hear anything this beautiful again.
Yeah.
For Frodo. Yeah.
So then in the next passage, which we're not reading, they follow the path to the river. We get, I do love this. I kind of wish we had read this, but Haldir's unique way of crossing the river.
So much we want to read the whole chapter, but I love this method of crossing.
Yeah. So basically, he whistles, and an elf steps out on the other side of the river, and then casts a coil of that rope across, that amazing gray rope that we saw before. And we'll get a chance to talk about this later on when we actually see this stuff named. But the rope of the Galadhrim is made of hithline, which is basically a Sindarin word for mist thread. So that implies not only a gray color, which we already know that it has, but just think about the connotations of mist, and you can imagine that this is a very light, soft, and supple material.
Right. This isn't some thick, heavy hemp rope. This is something that's lightweight, soft to the touch.
Exactly.
Very, like you said, supple. Great word. Yeah.
Yeah. So really, really cool stuff, and I love this method of crossing the river, even if I would never do it. I do too.
Oh, no, I know. Terrifying. And we're going to get a little bit of that here. We're actually going to get the crossing itself, as I'll read next.
Okay.
Celebrant is already a strong stream here, as you see, said Haldir, and it runs both swift and deep, and is very cold. We do not set foot in it so far north unless we must. But in these days of watchfulness, we do not make bridges. Now paging Turin Turambar. Turin Turambar to the white courtesy phone, please. In these days of watchfulness, we do not make bridges.
I have to think that that's the story they tell.
Yeah,
that makes them not build bridges. I'm just thinking.
I think so.
That's probably
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt my reading, but that kind of called out at me.
No, that was well done. That's point Sisto for that observation.
So Haldir continues, "This is how we cross. Follow me." He made his end of the rope fast about another tree, and then ran lightly along it, over the river and back again, as if he were on a road. "I can walk this path," said Legolas, "but the others have not this skill. Must they swim?" "No," said Haldir, "we have 2 more ropes. We will fasten..." Like, that's enough. If I'm standing there, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I'm supposed to tightrope my way across, and I'm like, my eyes are huge. I'm not doing this. Oh, don't worry, we got 2 more ropes.
Oh, it's totally fine. We got 2 more ropes that you can hold on to.
Do you happen to have 2 more ropes and a concrete bridge? Because then I might do this.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry.
Not helping. Thanks.
I mean, that struck me. 2 more ropes. Great. That's good. Thanks.
Yeah.
I'll need about 20 more, but
totally fine, guys. Yeah. Exactly.
Oh, 2 more ropes. Okay. We're good.
Okay. So I'm tightrope walking on 3 ropes. That's good. Okay.
Right. I mean, I can hold one. I can lean against another, and then I'll still have to tightrope, but hey,
I'm imagining the way that you're holding these things, like one hand is above your head.
Yeah, one's at shoulder height, and then you're holding another one at your waist. Yeah.
Well, one's shoulder height and one's half height. So you're holding one at your waist and one at your shoulder, and you're walking on the third.
But you're still walking on one, right?
It's not. No, I'm sorry. It doesn't.
And if this is half high for Aragorn and Boromir, then the one at shoulder height is out of his reach. And if it's the right height for
the hobbits are reaching up for the one that's
low.
Shoulder height for a man or an elf. Yeah, the hobbits are reaching up for that one.
If they're
and the
reaching
one that's
up for
half high is just brushing their hair.
Right.
So,
but if they've got them set to the hobbit heights, then they're both going to be at like waist level and knee level for Aragorn and Boromir. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But, the guy who sleeps on an unwalled platform in a tree says it's safe.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm fine.
Of course. That's a high bar. All right. I'm going to come back to the text this time, and I'll try not to interrupt it again. We have 2 more ropes. We will fasten them above the other, one shoulder high and another half high, and holding these, the strangers should be able to cross with care. When this slender bridge had been made, the company passed over, some cautiously and slowly, others more easily. Of the hobbits, Pippin proved the best, for he was sure-footed, and he walked over quickly, holding only with one hand, but he kept his eyes on the bank ahead and did not look down. Sam shuffled along, clutching hard, and looking down into the pale, eddying water as if it was a chasm in the mountains. He breathed with relief when he was safely across. Live and learn, as my gaffer used to say, though he was thinking of gardening, not of roosting like a bird, nor of trying to walk like a spider. Not even my Uncle Andy ever did a trick like that. Yeah, I'm with him. I'm shuffling along, clutching hard, trying not to pass out. Oh, man.
I mean, hey, power to you, Pippin Took, but that would not be
good
me.
for you, man.
I would be Sam.
Yeah, sadly I would as well. Some cautiously and slowly, some crying loudly, begging for Iluvatar to intervene. Yeah. Oh, man.
Exactly.
Terrifying moment right there. I also can't help but hear the unspoken bit from Haldir. And holding these, the strangers should be able to cross with care. Though if Gimli can't, that's okay with us. I mean, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man.
That's probably what he's thinking, I'm sure.
Pretty much. All right.
Well, back to the reason why they're not setting foot in the stream, right? Because it's already a strong stream where they are. It's swift and deep and cold.
It'll rush them away, and as cold as it is, they really won't be able to fight it very well.
Right.
And, of course, the bridges, the Turin bit. We don't build permanent bridges, so we just have these rope bridges.
Yeah. Yeah. But, again, the elves making this look really easy. Haldir does it. Look, guys, fine, no problem. I can do this.
Piece of cake.
Legolas, at least, has been around non-elves enough to remind them that, hey, not everybody else can do this.
Right.
And so, then we get the wonderfully
ever helpful 2 more ropes.
Safety net, safety ropes.
Yeah, guidelines of some sort.
So, I think we talked through the rest of this. The company kind of going across. Some have an easier time of it than others. Pippin, impressively.
Very
this is really cool because so far we haven't really seen Pippin be good at anything, really.
You're absolutely right.
He's
not the one you count on in any of the situations. Not yet.
Yeah, and I'm not beating up on Pippin. I'm just saying, like, he hasn't really had his moment to shine yet. He's kind of been the comic relief. He hasn't really grown into his adventuring boots yet. He's just kind of there, and yet we see him be very sure-footed here. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, he certainly is brave. And he is, what's the word I'm looking for? He's willing to go and do stuff. Like, just do it. Pick up a rock and throw it down a well. Throw. He's just.
So maybe his lack of impulse control is helping him.
That's the one. He's a little impulsive. Yeah, but I think here his impulsive behavior actually helps him. He's like, I'm going to go do this. And he goes and does it.
And he does it. Yeah.
But Sam, of course, is fearful. I can't blame him. That would be me all over the place. I got no qualms totally confessing that. That would be me.
Yeah. And as usual, he's got some good family wisdom to lean on here. His dad's proverb of live and learn.
And the addendum about his Uncle Andy, I had to look that up. But Appendix C, the family trees, tells us that his uncle was one Andwise Roper of Tyfield and was a rope maker. Now, later in the Taming of Smeagol, Sam mentions Andy again, along with his granddad, who was Hobson Gamgee, known as Roper Gamgee. And he talks about how they had a rope walk over by Tyfield.
Well, and Tolkien was ever the wordsmith. In the nomenclature, he actually says that Tyfield, the name of the town, is intended to contain an old word for rope, surviving in some of the senses of modern English tie, the noun, in which the spelling is assimilated to that of the related verb tie. It was the site of a rope walk, or rope maker's yard, which he then goes on to explain is called a rope walk because the ropes were stretched out in long lines over trestles at intervals.
I love that. So like you dig a little deeper and you find out a little bit more. But yeah, Tolkien obviously thought through who Uncle Andy was and who Roper Gamgee was and
why the place had this name and
Tyfield. Great stuff. All right, well let's go ahead and get to the next section here. Sean, I'm going to have you pick up when they enter the Ninth of Lórien.
And we're going to find out what happens when a blindfold comes between friends.
Yeah, you better not let me talk about that. Go ahead.
Moving on.
Indeed, please do.
Now, friends, said Haldir, you have entered the Ninth of Lórien, or the Gore, as you would say, for it is the land that lies like a spearhead between the arms of Silverlode and Anduin the Great. We allow no strangers to spy out the secrets of the Ninth. Few indeed are permitted even to set foot there. As was agreed, I shall here blindfold the eyes of Gimli the Dwarf.
Wait a minute, as agreed? That's what I'm thinking?
Yeah, Gimli's like, excuse me?
As I'd previously dictated is apparently...
Yeah. As was agreed. Unilaterally.
As agreed.
By moi. Yeah.
Oh, man, yeah.
And you could just see Gimli just like, what? Yeah. As was agreed, I shall here blindfold the eyes of Gimli the Dwarf. The others may walk free for a while, until we come nearer to our dwellings down in Egladil, in the angle between the waters. This was not at all to the liking of Gimli. You think?
Really? Oh, man.
The agreement was made without my consent, he said. I will not walk blindfold like a beggar or a prisoner, and I am no spy. My folk have never had dealings with any of the servants of the enemy. Neither have we done harm to the elves. I am no more likely to betray you than Legolas, or any other of my companions. I do not doubt you, said Haldir. Yet this is our law. I am not the master of the law, and cannot set it aside. I have done much in letting you set foot over Celebrant.
You dirty dwarf.
Okay.
I mean, it's kind of the unspoken
fine, Haldir.
bit.
Sure, whatever.
Yeah. I'm just following the rules, man.
I'm just following orders, because
yeah. Well, we'll get to that.
So well.
But let's start back at the beginning of this passage. They have entered the Ninth. They're now doing their Ninth moves. It's very quiet there, so it's the still of the Ninth.
Oh no. No.
And when they put the blindfold on Gimli, he's going to sing "You Shook Me All Night Long."
Oh.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I had to. I absolutely.
And
had
when the
to.
knife goes down in the city.
Oh man! Oh,
I know
good
that's
stuff.
lights, not night, but still, it sounded
It's close. It's close. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if it starts raining, well, we know we all love a rainy night. I'll stop. I'll stop. I promise. Only one
please.
more knife. Only one more knife.
Wow.
Okay, I'm done.
Wow.
Oh.
And you ended on, what was that, a Phil Collins reference too?
Yeah, that was a Phil Collins reference.
You
one more
ended
knife.
that bit on a Phil Collins reference. Wow, that's...
Knife.
Yeah.
All right. So they do enter the knife. Well, I couldn't really think of any songs that worked with
Still
gore.
of the Knife.
I know. I thought "Still of the Knife" was the real.
I'm sure somebody can identify like a death metal song or something that
With
has
gore
in
I'm
it.
sure, but I don't know that.
Or-
The only gore I know would be Martin Gore from Depeche Mode. So that's totally different.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of knife and gore, once again we've got Tolkien translating one word we'd never heard before with another word we've never heard before.
I know exactly.
So knife is actually Sindarin, and I have to admit that a couple of episodes ago, I think it was episode 160 for Tolkien Reading Day, I actually totally mispronounced it. I said Nath. I don't know why.
Yeah,
I wasn't
think we
thinking
did.
of it as Sindarin, but it is actually Sindarin. It just means spear point, or it can also mean any formation or projection tapering to a point. Also in Parma El de Lambron 17, it's also translated as simply angle. So
There you go, trotting out Parma El de Lambron 17
always
again,
got to bring
Sean.
out the Parma El de Lambron. Man,
Dude,
if
come
you got
on.
it, flaunt it.
Elitist.
So,
All right.
So yeah, it literally means a spear point, but it has
Yeah.
taken on meanings of other things that are sort of spear shaped.
Sure, right. That exactly. They have sort of a cute triangle thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Gore is the English word for what is usually a small triangular piece of land. And in fact, I know that word. You think on a freeway, you might hear something about somebody's pulled over in the gore point. We're talking about, when you go to an off ramp or an on ramp, you have that little triangle that you're not supposed to go into. That's the gore
yeah.
point. Yeah. And so
Really,
every once in a while,
I didn't. I've never heard that usage before. That's really interesting.
Yeah, at least here in California. I don't know if maybe other
Okay.
states don't call it that, but that's the gore point. So that's the only way I've ever referenced the word.
That's a gruesome image to have when you're driving down the freeway.
I know, exactly.
That's the gore point.
It's the
Why is it
gore
called
point.
the gore point, Dad? You don't want to know.
That's right. That's
Because if you
absolutely
crash
right.
into it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But now, according to the OED, gore is apparently from Old English gar, which means spear. So it really is an exact translation of knife into English.
It is, and despite my jokes, it is completely unrelated to the word gore, which, which when we think of something being gory or bloody.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. And this particular knife that we're talking about here is a triangular piece of land between the arms of Silverlode and Anduin. We get that in the text.
Yes, we do. Along with the reminder that no strangers can spy out this area, that few indeed are permitted to even be here. So kind of the implication is that if few are permitted to be here, but none are allowed to spy it out, then we have a lot of blindfolds handy, which, as we'll see, is going to come in very convenient.
Yeah.
So then we get what we talked about, as was
Poor
agreed.
Gimli. Yeah.
As was agreed.
My lawyer wasn't by there. Everybody except the guy actually affected by it. Yeah.
All I could think of was that scene in episode 4 of Star Wars when Luke tries to go handcuff Chewbacca.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to go put this on you.
Exactly. Haldir reminds him of the agreement and says he's going to blindfold Gimli. Gimli's like, no. Wait a minute. I didn't agree to this. Also, I'm not a spy.
And how dare you insinuate again that I am?
I know. Haldir's kind of not quite. I don't know that I really believe him when he says, I don't doubt you. I think he's just trying to kind of deflect here, isn't he?
I know. He is kind of trying to deflect a little bit. Yeah. I mean, he's saying, I'm just doing what I'm told. And, really, I've already done you a favor.
Yeah. Al, you love that. You should be already thanking me, you terrible dwarf. Yeah.
Thanking you for what? For not killing him on sight?
Right. I mean, thanks for not shooting me right away.
Turning me away?
Yeah. Turning me away to where, then I'm going to go get killed by your soldiers as they try to leave.
To be consumed by orcs, yeah.
Right. So while we don't read the rest, we do get to just talk about it. Gimli, obstinate. I love that word. This is sort of like live free or die, man. This is the don't tread on me guy right here.
Yeah, planted his feet firmly apart, got the hand on the axe, man.
Yeah, I'm going to do this. I go forward free or I go back home. Oh.
And this kind of triggers Haldir a little bit, doesn't it?
Boy, it sure does.
He's like, now he's stern, right?
I've done you a favor, but that's it, man.
Yeah, and like, no, I'm not letting you go at this point. Now that you've come this far, you have to be brought before Galadhrim and Celeborn. It's going to be up to them whether they're going to give you leave or not. Of course, they're not named. They're just the Lord and the Lady here. But
well, right.
But yeah, I mean, things are escalating quickly here.
Very quickly. He tells them, you can't turn around and go back. You will be killed if you do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You turn around and go. There are secret sentinels. You would die before you even saw them. Mostly because you're loud and clumsy.
So here I have to ask a question. Haldir says he's just following orders.
Right.
I'm thinking now of a similar episode that we're going to see in the next book. I'm thinking of Book 3, Chapter 2, The Riders of Rohan. And recall that when Éomer finds Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli wandering in Rohan, he is under similar orders not to let strangers pass freely through the country. And he says to Aragorn, I do not doubt you, nor the deed which my heart would do. Yet I am not free to do all as I would. It is against our law to let strangers wander at will in our land, until the king himself shall give them leave. And more strict is the command in these days of peril. I have begged you to come back willingly with me, and you will not. Loath am I to begin a battle of 100 against 3.
Indeed. Now, Aragorn manages to persuade him, thankfully. And finally, Éomer decides to break the rules. And he says, my company chafes to be away, and every hour lessens your hope. This is my choice. You may go, and what is more, I will lend you horses. This only I ask. When your quest is achieved or is proved vain, return with the horses over the Entwade to Medgiseld, the high house in Edoras where Theoden now sits. Thus you shall prove to him that I have not misjudged. In this I place myself, and maybe my very life, in the keeping of your good faith. Do not fail. I will not, said Aragorn. Yeah. So you're right to go here mentally, to think of this moment with Éomer and this very, very similar set of rules.
Because we're dealing with Haldir and Éomer are under almost the same orders, virtually the same orders, really.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
And they have completely different attitudes towards it. Okay, Éomer at first acknowledges that, look, these are the rules, and I'm I'm not really ready to break the rules here. But then he does.
And he wants to from the very beginning.
And he
that
does.
Line that
You're
you
right.
read, I don't doubt you nor the deed which my heart would do.
That's
he
true.
wants to do the right thing from the beginning.
It's not just this weak, I don't doubt you, which Haldir gives. You really do believe that Éomer is truthful here because he says the deed which my heart would do. And we see how this ends up for both of them, don't we?
Yeah.
Because
we do.
Haldir's caution and strict adherence to the rules proves to be unnecessary. Actually, in the very next section of this chapter, the next episode, we're going to see Galadhrim actually orders that the guests be allowed to walk free.
Right.
And we also know that Éomer's trust in Aragorn and in the three hunters is actually rewarded.
Yes,
so what's going on here? Should Haldir trust his own judgment more? Is Haldir looking for an excuse and kind of leaning back on these orders as an excuse? Yeah. What do you think is going on between these two guardians?
Well, I think the difference is going back to the motive of the heart, so to speak. That passage that you read from Éomer, the part about nor the deed which my heart would do, tells us that from the very beginning, maybe not the very beginning when they first encountered them, but from the moment that they'd had a conversation and spoke enough for Éomer to form an informed opinion of the three hunters, he wants to do the right thing. He wants to let them go and to help them. Haldir we never see that with Haldir here.
No.
He never has a moment where he seems like he's treating Gimli with any decency. It's more like, I'm doing you a favor by not killing you. We've agreed you're going to be blindfolded, even though I didn't talk to you about that. I don't even talk to you directly. I don't. It's not.
Yes.
He doesn't say.
Absolutely right.
Come here, Gimli. I need to put a blindfold on you. I'm going to blindfold the dwarf. This guy over here. Have an eye on the dwarf.
Now it's time for us to blindfold Gimli the dwarf. Talking about him like he's not even there.
Third person, like he's exactly. Yeah. And that's sort of depersonifying, right? He's objectifying Gimli and making him less than personhood.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's what these two passages really illustrate, that difference. So
you're absolutely
to me,
right.
That's the big key right there, is the motive of Haldir and the motive of
this is just plain racism, really, on Haldir's part. And I don't want to come across as too hard on Haldir, but that's what's going on here.
It is. I mean, and maybe in a way it's understandable because they have been so isolated for so long. And I mean, again, that doesn't justify it. It just explains it, right? I'm not trying to say it's okay to be this way in any sense.
No, I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
It explains why he's that way. But you look at this and you never see the moment where his heart sort of, I really wish I could do this, but I'm kind of stuck under these rules. And Éomer, on the other hand, is clearly kind of chafing at the bit to do something different. He really wants to do something different. And of course, in the end, he does.
And the interesting thing about that is that, the Rohirrim, if you sort of look at where the Rohirrim are among men in terms of sort of their enlightenment and their sophistication, they're kind of about where the Galadhrim would be.
They're middle men, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, they're not.
That's kind of what these dwarves.
They're not as enlightened as the Gondorians, just like the elves of Lothlórien are not quite as enlightened as maybe the elves of Rivendell.
Right.
Not counting.
But they're above the Avari, just as though.
Right.
Well, I know. Yeah, you're talking about the Sindar themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
But they're not Avari like maybe the wild men of Dunharrow.
Right.
So you've got these different levels, these different tiers, and you're right. They're both very similar, kind of mid-tier in their race, their respective races.
And they're both somewhat isolationist. Obviously
the
Galadhrim are very isolationist. The Rohirrim, not so much, but
not as much.
They've sort of become more so in recent generations.
True.
And it's interesting that we see Éomer have such a different reaction to these rules he's under than Haldir does. And I think you're absolutely right. I think it's Éomer's heart is telling him to do the right thing. Haldir is really just tainted by his prejudices here.
Yeah, he really is. He is. So Gimli, man. Oh, let's do this.
Let's go, bro. Come at me. Yeah.
Come at me, bro. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up from there and read through the rest of our passage for the night. Gimli drew his axe from his belt. Haldir and his companion bent their bows. A plague on dwarves and their stiff necks, said Legolas. Come, said Aragorn. If I am still to lead this company, you must do as I bid. It is hard upon the dwarf to be thus singled out. We will all be blindfold, even Legolas. That will be best, though it will make the journey slow and dull. Gimli laughed suddenly. A merry troop of fools we shall look. Will Haldir lead us all on a string like many blind beggars with one dog? But I will be content if only Legolas here shares my blindness. I am an elf and a kinsman here, said Legolas, becoming angry in his turn. Now let us cry a plague on the stiff necks of elves, said Aragorn. But the company shall all fare alike. Come, bind our eyes, Haldir. I shall claim full amends for every fallen stubbed toe if you do not lead us well, said Gimli, as they bound a cloth about his eyes. You will have no claim, said Haldir. I shall lead you well, for the paths are smooth and straight. Yeah, he was ready to roll, man. He was ready to do this.
To roll. He is. He's ready to throw down.
Yes, he is. So much fun. So much fun in this passage, isn't it?
It is. I mean, and it's a sad passage because they're just, this is escalating so quickly. Yeah. And Legolas, of course, blaming the victim here.
I know.
Addressing the stubbornness of dwarves, completely ignoring the
way this
must
the
feel.
Elves and their racist tendencies.
Right. Right. The naked racism of the elves.
I know.
Yeah. And they're they're insinuating that he's untrustworthy, which is just
right.
awful.
It is. All I'm hearing now, by the way, is They Might Be Giants, you and your racist friend.
Your racist friend, absolutely.
I love that song.
Yep. And Aragorn actually steps in and says, this is where the party ends. Because I can't stand here listening to you and your racist friend.
Well done, sir. I love that.
Thank you. Aragorn actually does step up and lead here, doesn't he? He
comes up with a great solution.
Leads by leading. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's all put on the blindfold.
Yeah.
So that Gimli isn't the only one.
Exactly. So Gimli won't be the only one.
Right.
And so we're all going to do this. And Gimli, of course,
he's really just trying to keep the peace at this point,
Yeah.
And Gimli says no.
No, we're going to look. Yeah, that's all right. I don't need y'all to do that. I just need this guy. I just need this guy right here who's been giving me grief.
I don't care about everybody else. Just him. I just want him to wear it.
That's right. I love that. I don't want Frodo to miss out on this, but I don't want Legolas to share in it. I want him to suffer like me. I love that. And of course,
Legolas, of course, is perfectly reasonable about this. He's like, yes, of course, I'll happily do that.
That makes sense. No, he's like, wah, wah, wah.
And it's all starting up again. And completely failing to see the irony here. And
they really are.
Aragorn, pot meet the kettle. Kettle meet
exactly.
the pot.
Kettle pot.
Seriously, guys, just blindfold all of us. And so they do.
Yeah. And so they do. Well, a plague on the stiff necks of our listeners who tune out early. After all, we have Bartleman's bag coming your way in a minute. And when that's done, well, the talk still continues all night long at the Prancing Pony.
That's right, folks. We've always got lots of discussion happening in our social media spaces. At our common room on Facebook, you'll find comments, questions, corrections, and more on every episode. You'll also get updates from us throughout the week. Just look for the Prancing Pony Podcast on Facebook and click the like and follow buttons.
And now we have another common room on Reddit. You can find great discussions there at r/PrancingPonyPod. And as always, you can find us on Twitter and on Instagram with the handle @PrancingPonyPod. So follow us wherever you happen to be. If you like us, please consider sharing us on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, anywhere you can find Tolkien fans.
And if you really want to let the world know your feelings about us, especially if they're good, give us a review on Apple Podcasts. The more reviews we have, the more visible the podcast is. That helps others find us and this great community of Tolkien fans we've built together and that I am so proud to say is still growing.
And especially at a time like this where the community is coming together and spending a lot of time supporting each other and encouraging each other during these difficult days.
Yep.
Now, of course, if you'd like access to exclusive content like postscripts, quarterly specials, PPP swag, and getting to listen to episodes being recorded live, like 30 people or so are doing right now, well, you can check out patreon.com/prancingponypod to find out how you can join the fellowship of the podcast. Now, I think it's time to see what old Bartleman has in the mailbag for us tonight. Sean.
All right. Well, first of all, many of you have written to us about the Vril discussion that we had back in episode 157.
No.
You know where this is going.
Yeah, I do know where it's going. Much to my dismay, and to the destruction of my appetite. But some of our listeners overseas have actually offered to send us Bovril. We appreciate the thought, but no thank you. We're really okay without it.
I actually do really appreciate the thought because, unlike my trepidatious co-host here, I actually do really want to try it. But
fluid beef
I have been
extract,
told,
Sean? Fluid beef extract.
I really, really want to try it.
All right,
but
man.
I have been told that it's not allowed to be imported into the U.S., and I don't want to get anybody in trouble on my account. So Thank you, folks, but I will pass on that offer until the rules change. But thank you anyway. I actually have found that there are some American substitutes that I'm going to try, and, well, next time I'm in the UK, maybe I'll see if I can get my hands on the real thing.
Yeah.
But enough about Bovril. Some listeners also wrote in to ask why when we were...
Yes, enough about Bovril. Go on.
Alan is thinking, yeah, it was enough about Bovril before we even mentioned Bovril.
Leave that in the rearview mirror, please. Yes.
Yeah. But some listeners actually wrote in to ask why, when we were talking about Bulwer Lytton, why we didn't talk about his main claim to fame, or notoriety, I guess. He's actually famous for starting a novel with the sentence, "It was a dark and stormy night."
That's right. That was actually the first line of Bulwer Lytton's 1830 novel, Paul Clifford. And the entire opening of that novel has become quite famous. I'm going to read this in that sort of cheesy, sort of overly dramatic voice that he was trying to write.
Please do.
It was a dark and stormy night. The rain fell in torrents, except at occasional intervals when it was checked by a violent gust of wind which swept up the streets. For it is in London that our scene lies, rattling along the housetops and fiercely agitating the scanty flame of the lamps that struggled against the darkness. Sorry. I have to laugh. That's so bad. Oh, my goodness. That is such a long sentence. We should, punish high school seniors by making them diagram that thing.
That would be a lot of fun. A lot of fun to make them do it, I mean.
Well, right. Not to actually diagram it. And now you know somebody's going to diagram it and send it in. You know that'll happen now.
Please do. Yeah.
Have at it, folks. Have at it. All right.
Yep. Well, "It was a dark and stormy night" has gone on to serve as the beginning of novels by all kinds of writers, ranging from Madeleine L'Engle to Snoopy. And many people understandably assume that Bulwer Lytton actually coined that phrase, but he actually didn't. The phrase first appeared 21 years earlier in a book by Washington Irving that was called A History of New York. But Bulwer Lytton was the first to begin a book with it. And his usage of it became a cliche for bad book beginnings.
Yes, it did.
So much so that since 1982, there's actually been an annual Bulwer Lytton fiction contest that, according to the website, I'm going to quote that here, has challenged man, woman, and very precocious child to write an atrocious opening sentence to a hypothetical bad novel. They say they're honored to receive thousands of odious entries from around the world each year.
Oh, I got to read some of those. So if you want to know more about the annual contest, you can check out their website, www.bulwer, BULWER, Lytton, LYTTON.com.
Where, according to the website, the www means Wretched Writers Welcome. There you go.
There, indeed.
Well, next up, we've got a really cool connection that's been pointed out by one of our listeners. This came to us from Peter F. in Sweden, who wrote to us to say, "It may be nothing, but the description of the gray day near the end of December," now this is going back to The Ring Goes South when the Fellowship set out from Rivendell.
Mm-hmm.
Peter says that reminded me of the newly discovered Noel poem by Tolkien from 1939 that Hammond and Skull found in 2013.
Let's stop there and read the passage in question first, the one from The Ring Goes South. This shows up right after Bilbo's poem, "I sit beside the fire and think." It was a cold, gray day near the end of December. The east wind was streaming through the bare branches of the trees and seething in the dark pines on the hills. Ragged clouds were hurrying overhead, dark and low. As the cheerless shadows of the early evening began to fall, the company made ready to set out. They were to start at dusk, for Elrond counseled them to journey under cover of night as often as they could, until they were far from Rivendell.
That's right. That was the passage from Lord of the Rings. All right, well, now on to the Noel poem. The complete poem is actually available on TolkienGateway.com if you'd like to read it. But I'll go ahead and read the first two stanzas here.
Okay.
"Grim was the world and gray last night. The moon and stars were fled. The hall was dark without song or light. The fires were fallen dead. The wind in the trees was like to the sea, and over the mountain's teeth it whistled bitter cold and free as a sword leapt from its sheath. The Lord of Snows upreared his head, his mantle long and pale, upon the bitter blast was spread and hung o'er hill and dale. The world was blind, the boughs were bent, all ways and paths were wild. Then the veil of cloud apart was rent, and here was born a child.
Now, Peter pointed out that Wayne Hammond and Christina Scull discovered this poem in 2013. They wrote about it on their blog at wayneandchristina.wordpress.com, and we'll put a link up to that. It was published in the 1936 annual of Our Ladies' School, Abingdon, near Oxford, and the scholars found it simply by following up on a reference to a poem or two by Tolkien in another publication.
I love that. That's awesome.
The joys of incredibly deep research, folks. They said, this proved to be an unrecorded work by Tolkien, though its first lines seemed familiar.
Now Hammond and Scull added that the ABAB rhyme scheme and the imagery of dark and light, moon and stars can be found elsewhere in Tolkien's verse. Noel is unusual, however, in that it is a directly Christian poem celebrating the birth of Christ, which brought light and joy to dispel the darkness of the world. Now, Peter pointed out something similar in his email to us. He said, I think it rather interesting, not just because it is a newly found poem by Tolkien. To me, it also resonates with the pagan or pre-Christian way of describing that day in Lord of the Rings. That before the eucatastrophic advent of Christ, it was just a gray day near the end of December, but now is something totally different, at least to Christians. Peter says, what say you?
Wow. That is an interesting observation.
Really interesting observation. Absolutely. I mean,
I remember we talked a little bit about the idea that this was Christmas Day, and that here there's a reason why they're setting out on the 25th. There's a reason that the tower falls on March 25th.
Right.
But the reason isn't explicit in the text. It's this idea that, like Peter says, it resonates with that pre-Christian way of looking at December 25th. It's just a gray day near the end of December.
Back then it was just a gray day in December. Gray day near the end of December.
But man, the symbolism in this poem.
Absolutely.
The dark before the light.
This image of the dark before the light is really, really powerful. And there are actually some parallels to the language of The Ring Goes South. I think that's exactly what Hammond and Scull were talking about. The gray and the dark and the cold and the bitter wind.
Yeah.
There's a lot of resonance there.
There is.
There's even a little bit of Beowulf in the poem.
That's what I was going to say, yeah. And in fact, to me, the Beowulf thought, I mean, there's also imagery, right? The hall was dark without song or light is the one that grabbed my mind. But also the idea of Beowulf as this sort of pagan tale being retold by a Christian scribe.
Absolutely. And when you're thinking back to
same connection.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. So I think there's a lot of resonance here in this poem, which I had read before, but I hadn't really looked at in a long time.
And I certainly hadn't made any connections, but that's really interesting.
Not at all. So I think that was a really cool catch by Peter, and I'm glad we got a chance to share it here.
I agree. So thanks, Peter, for bringing this to our attention. And folks, that wraps it up for another episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast. Now, be sure to join us again next week when we'll eventually have our blindfolds removed.
So the whole week, that's going to make it very, very long.
Yes, it will. I suspect we'll be putting in a claim for more than a few stubbed toes with Haldir's insurance company. So hopefully they won't drop him.
He's already indemnifying himself. He's like, hey, no, I'm going to lead you just fine.
Right. And I'm just following orders anyway. So it's
exactly.
all on Galadhrim's policy.
Right.
So as always, folks, we really do want to thank each of you for listening. And we also want to give a very special thank you to our patrons at the Kierdance contributions here. DeMay in Alaska, James in Virginia, Tamsin in Minnesota, Chad in Texas, Lance in New Jersey, Paul in Colorado, Jerry in Texas, Bruce in California, Mario in Utah, Seth in Texas, Ella in California, Joseph in Texas, and Kathy in North Carolina. Thank you all so very much.
And make sure you don't miss a single episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast. Subscribe to the show through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app.
And one last thing as always, don't forget to send your questions, comments, and most of all, your Uncle Andy's tricks to Bartleman at theprancingponypodcast.com.
Barlaman is aggressively unpunctual with the mail these days, but we will get back to you.
I love how much worse this gets every week, by the way. This is awesome. Keep it up, man.
But we'll get back to you as soon as we can, and your question or comment may be featured on an upcoming show.
But only if it's good enough. I'm just kidding.
Right.
Because clearly we don't have very much in the way of standards. For ourselves, that is. Well, this has been far too short a time to spend among such excellent and admirable listeners. But until next time.
Farewell, friends.